Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haramai, and welcome to the Niche Cast. We are from the niche-case.com, and we are here to talk about Aotearoa sport. That's all we do. Nothing more, nothing less, just big old yarns about New Zealand sport where we go deep. We go deep into the estuaries, no longer using the mangroves. I've stepped away from the mangroves. Regular listeners will know about my spiritual journey into the mangroves and out of the mangroves, because they do murky the waters quite a bit. So we're looking for clear waters. We're looking for clear waters in our estuaries, and we go deep into the estuaries, deep into the awa, deep into all the nooks and crannies of Aotearoa sport. And in doing so, you make some mistakes sometimes. So I'd like to apologize. My bad. It's just a little my bad. I wasn't really quite aware of your mahi. Wasn't really like tuned in like that, but maybe because there are a few caveats. Like I'm not apologizing that hard, right? Like I'm apologizing, but I'm saying but. So it's a sorry but. So our first apology, the one and only meter eater himself, the champion of post-contact meters for the New Zealand Aotearoa Warriors. I don't know if he's actually the champion. I think he's second behind Sean's Nickel Crockstar. Let me just make sure we're talking actual factual here. No, I apologize too, Jackson Ford. But when I was incredibly frustrated with Jackson Ford, that was when he started. Now he's come off the bench and he's an absolute monster. So it's like an apology, but. So I'm apologizing to Jackson Ford, but it's like, I don't know if it's a full bunga apology, because the starting version of Jackson Ford was a little bit frustrating. The bench version of Jackson Ford is absolutely awesome. Jackson Ford is first for post-contact meters for the Aotearoa Warriors this season, and the Aotearoa Warriors are first in post-contact meters per game. More on Warriors stats later on in the podcast, but that is to say, Jackson Ford is an absolute monster. So shout out to Jackson Ford. I think we've also got 3 consecutive games in a row. Consecutive and in a row are actually the same thing. So we'll go 3 consecutive games. Jackson Ford averaging 10 meters per run.
Jackson, go forward.
Jackson, go forward. There we go. Go, go, go. It's a go. And this is my first apologies. So shout out to Jackson Ford. I sees you. I mean, there's a few good Warriors, but crikey, Jackson Ford is awesome. So that's my first apology, Jackson Ford. The bench version of you, well, to be honest, that was part of a very frustrating first game for the Warriors. But now you're back on the bench and you're an absolute dynamo. So shout out to Jackson Ford. Second apology, Francisco Chico Geraldes. Because I think it was in our bonus podcast. Shout out to the weekly bonus podcast we record on Thursday for the folks on Patreon and anyone with a paid Substack subscription. I kind of was a little bit dubious about Chico. And the buts. I'm sorry to Chico, because you are a good player and I do like what you're doing for the Wellington Phoenix. But sometimes you're still doing a bit too much, and also you're on loan. So I don't want to get too attached to Chico Geraldes, because we'll get deeper into this later on the podcast as well, because you wrote in our newsletter yesterday via Substack, thenichecase.substack.com, that Marco Rojas has been released. So maybe this is opening an opportunity for the Wellington Phoenix to sign Chico Geraldes on a proper deal, not just a loan deal. So I don't want to get too attached. And I also think a lot of his razzle-dazzle can be a bit whimsical, a bit flimsy, but he is doing much better than I initially thought. And credit to you, apologies to you. You did highlight the connection. They need to spend time together. Now he's building those connections with the Wellington Phoenix boys. He's swimming with the Sharks. He's exploring Aotearoa. So shout out to Chico Geraldes. I'm sorry. My bad. With a few buts.
Yeah, I mean, I can't I can't say I disagreed with you about the Jackson Ford stuff after week one. So I think that butt gets like an underline under it. He's been fantastic the last 3 weeks, but that doesn't mean he was good in week one, because he wasn't, and that clearly wasn't his role. Which is a weird one when I've been sitting here as a Dragons fan watching Jackson Ford and figuring out what his role is, because like all this middle forward stuff that he seems to do now, I looked it up because I was like, I don't remember Jackson Ford being anything other than a back rower for the Dragons, who would, take a few runs, make a few tackles, just kind of hang out in the line and do what he needed to do, but he didn't do a whole lot on top of that. That was when he was a younger player as well, so obviously he's grown and developed a little bit. I think he bulked up a fair bit last season in order to be able to play through the middle a lot more. I think maybe he's found a better balance this year in terms of his physicality, because he's looking faster again, whilst also still being strong enough to hold his own there. But yeah, he was just a solid back rower for the Dragons, and now he's missed a bit of everything for the Warriors, coming off the bench and playing whatever they need him to do.
You did. I like your use of the middle. Now he's playing through the middle, but you're still using back rower. Like, that's a very Australian. That's a very old school rugby league thing. And I'm just bringing that up.
Well, he was playing for the Dragons, so the old school rugby league thing was probably appropriate at the time.
Well, my other point was going to be that I don't remember Jackson Ford actually playing for the Dragons. I'm surprised you've got any memories of Jackson Ford playing for the Dragons.
Yeah, fair enough. If you weren't following the team, why would you?
It's not like he was a standout. Need to know about that dude back in the day, 50,000 years ago, when he did play for the Dragons. But personally, the prop, the back rower, the lock, all of that shit just annoys me. Yes, there are differences. There's nuance in your roles, but you're either playing in the middle, you're playing on the edge. You can be a small forward. That's why I've brought in the small forward term, because you can be a small forward who has to be faster and more skillful than the big boppers, but you're still playing through the middle. And there's not a whole lot of difference these days between lock and prop, but also, like, where does back row come from? What's actually back row about you?
From those scrums that nobody cares about in the sport.
No one gives a crap about scrums. So where's the back row? Where's the front row? No, we're just playing through the edge. We're playing through the middle. But that's just my pet peeves. Any thoughts on Chico Geraldes?
Well, that one I did have more of a pushback at the time. Not so much because I was saying, like, no, actually, he's playing amazing. It was more just like, we'll give him some time. Like, you already said that. It's like, we'll see what he looks like when he has a few games with these guys. Joining mid-season is hard. I think with imports in general, it takes a while to settle down. He just needed to go swimming with the Sharks or something like that to sort it out. But that was easily his best game on the weekend, and it was probably the best Phoenix performance for about 2 months as well, since before the big derby thrashing as well, which it was a shame they couldn't hold on and win. But like, if the 2 points that went missing it's not going to make a difference to their season. They are looking forward towards next season, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on, I suspect, particularly when it comes to the release of Maka Rojas, because I was very surprised, like to the point of frustration. They're looking at the angry reactions to Maka Rojas being released. It's like, well, you can't have it both ways. Like, he's either too injured and therefore why would you want to re-sign him, or he's like what's the opposite way? Like, or you need to release him early, because I don't know. What difference does it make if you're going to release him a couple weeks early if he's not going to come back next season? I guess is the point. It's not it's not a reflection of the team being in some kind of absolute shambles at the top, down, and none of this stuff. This is actually just clever thinking ahead for next season. And I think one of those indicators, maybe the biggest indicator we've had, that it is very much more about next season at this point than whatever they can achieve for the rest of this season. I think Luke Brooks-Smith getting the start on the weekend was also another one of those examples. Like, there's a few more of these lately, and it's probably the wise thing to do for the Phoenix at this point. So I'm curious to see what Marco Rojas does next, though. He might just decide he's had a few too many injuries in the last 2 years and he wants to retire. He might have something else already lined up. That is what happened when they released Oscar Van Hatten, was because he had something else lined up. They waited for a while for David Paul to find something. He did eventually. I was disappointed to see him signing with a club in 6th tier England over the weekend, because I was really hoping for the Wellington Olympic turn. I just wanted to see him get his Greek citizenship and play for them, play some more National League. Apparently that's not going to happen because he's gone back to Manchester, at least for now, at least for the, maybe he'll come back after his playing career, but he's going to try finish the season there with some club where it sounds like he's got a lot of family who supports them, so it's sort of a bit of a sentimental thing for him as well. But there is method to the madness with the Rojas situation and with a lot of these other Phoenix things. That doesn't mean they've had a good season. That doesn't mean that there aren't things that need to be significantly improved. But just because something seemingly bad happens, or a player gets released early, doesn't mean that everything is in a mess. And chuck that one out here so we maybe don't have to do that later on now.
Yeah, I was going to say, is this the Phoenix segment, or is this
Yeah, we'll get that out of the way because there are more important, interesting things about the Phoenix later.
Yeah, this is my apology segment. Like, what are you doing? This isn't the Phoenix segment. This is my apology segment. But yeah, shout out to Chico Geraldes. He's a razzle dazzle merchant. So if you're not a football fan, if you're not really tapped into the Wellington Phoenix and you want to see a razzle dazzle merchant, check out the Chico Geraldes playing for the Wellington Phoenix. Obviously, we got the website full of the deep dives, the niche-case.com. You can support us a couple of dollars a month through Patreon. You get the full newsletter. You get the bonus podcast every week. Very easy, cheap, and nasty way to support the Niche Case. We appreciate all the Patreon whānau. Big up to you. And you can sign up to our newsletter, which is via Substack, thenichecase.substack.com. That comes out every Monday and Thursday, where we just drop paragraphs about New Zealand sport. I mean, to be honest, that's all we do. We do have basically half of it is for the paid subscribers, half of it is open for everyone. That's another way to support the Niche Case and the whole platform. So if you're on Substack, please consider becoming a paid subscriber, and you get the bonus podcast as well as the bonus yarns. And the full newsletter paid section included is copied into Patreon as well for everyone on Patreon. You can make a donation through Buy Me a Coffee as well. And obviously we're all on all the platforms because we have to be. And then we get offline, and we encourage you to get offline as well, especially in Aotearoa. If you're wherever you are in Aotearoa, there's some fantastic places to just chill out. So make sure you're getting out in nature, you're unwinding, you're relaxing, you're healing yourself, because that's what we're doing, just to keep the clarity of Aotearoa sporting insights and our sanity, because it's the best way to keep yourself sane, healthy, and rocking and rolling. Let's go mindfulness on that note of healing, relaxation, and finding the inner guidance within you through your intuition, through connection to Aotearoa. Let me finish this, though. I've thrown up the idea of worshipping at the Temple of Mount Smart. But then I'm also like, okay, big part of Māori culture is like the religions, the guiding forces are the mountains, it's the rivers, it's the ocean, it's the ancestors, which is just a far better thing than saying, oh, there's, this is whatever religion you want to chuck up. No, like the mountain is my guiding force. I prefer that style of thinking. And obviously I'm from Auckland, so I just want to put that out there that I worship Rangitoto. It's just something I thought about. It's just anyone in Auckland, anyone around Auckland, you're always looking at Rangitoto. It's like, what else? What else am I going to worship? Nothing. Because we're of the belief that I'm God, you're God, we are our own God, and we are a little bit avant-garde, a little bit alternative. So I just want to put out there, for me personally, I worship Rangitoto because it's always there, it's always looking pristine. It's an ancient volcano. Like, what more do you want? As a guiding force, like a spiritual guiding force. Rangitoto Island is right there. Personally, I worship Rangitoto, and I'd encourage anyone else around Aotearoa, if you got that kind of natural force nearby, maybe just start to connect with it deeper. Now, obviously, this isn't anything new for the indigenous folk of this glorious land who have been doing it for centuries. But as some half Pākehā, half Palangi modern folk, it is a little bit new. So I just want to announce that I'm worshipping Rangitoto for anyone who cares. But for more me personally, just connecting with the local lands, waters, and air. There's a bit of mindfulness. Let's get a little bit more.
The essential elements. Did you have anything Lord of the Ringsy in the tank?
Yeah, like, where do I begin? But it's hard because I'm listening to the audiobooks, as we know, through devious means.
Yeah.
But I'm
You
off
can't
the
just take the photo of the page when
they say
I'm
something
like, good.
To be honest, by that time of night, I'm off the Aotearoa vitamins, got the herbal essence blessing my mind. So there's no way I can just like memorize what I'm hearing. At that point, there's no way I'm going to write down what I'm hearing. And then I keep meaning I actually was like, no, I'll put it off for a couple of weeks and I'll go back and then I'll write it down. But you brought it up right now and I'm not prepared. I'll say that. I'll apologize. That's my excuse. I'm not prepared for that. But also, like, you search Lord of the Rings guidance or wisdom, and you get a whole bunch of quotes, but they're quite like, it's like these aren't really hitting the spot. Like, there's some there's one really well-known one that I can't actually remember off the top of my head. If you do a quick search, you might find it because it's the very, very like obvious. Maybe I'll actually search it while you're talking, but it's more, if you do want some Lord of the Rings guidance, which is actually where my worship of Rangitoto comes from, because I was like cruising past looking at Rangitoto, I was like, this kind of...
You're listening to the book thinking, this Mount Doom place sounds nice.
Oh, that's actually bang on, because I was like, I don't know, Rangitoto could be Mount Doom, Like, what's if just a couple of Kiwis went over, climbed to the top of Rangitoto, dropped the ring in, and just saved the world? I mean, that would be pretty cool. But obviously, it's not going to happen. So but it's more I find that Lord of the Rings just has like the less quotes and more just the story. Has so much wisdom in the story, which, as I said a few weeks ago, is crazy considering it was written 70 years ago. But it's the kind of the light and the dark. If you do want some insight, the light and the dark is the big thing. But then obviously dealing with the ring, the one ring to rule them all, it becomes clear that it's not just a big existential battle between light and dark. It's the light and dark within you as well. And there are a few other things like Blackcaps. There's the old dudes getting better, but there's the young dudes getting better as well. Lord of the Rings, there's that big picture battle between the light and the dark, but then there's also hyper focused on the inner battle between the light and the dark as well. And that's all that I can come up with off the top of my head. But whether it's the worshipping Rangitoto, whether it's just other themes hitting hard, I do love the healing powers of Aragon, for example. I do love the peace and serenity of the Elf place and what
Rivendell.
they're up. Yep, that's a great place. Obviously, Gandalf's a big champ as well. That dude he's a winner. Oh, Gandalf, he's a winner. The humor, the wit throughout the story, and then just the fantastic writing where you just feel everything. And it's like, so again, it's the weather as well. Like the when the darkness is coming, the weather changes, and but I'm waffling on, so yeah, not sure if that gave you anything.
Yeah, sure. There's plenty. Like I think with Tolkien is he was very much like the story was written 70 years ago or whatever, or probably written but published 70 years ago, probably written a lot before that. I'm sure it took him a little while when he's coming up with like brand new languages and everything. But I think he's also tapping into some I don't think this is sort of a stated thing of his, is he was trying to create like a new mythology. So he's also tapping into like themes that are timeless, like ideas that go back to the first stories that were told in bloody caves or whatever. So I think that's like I think that's one of the reasons why it resonates, is because he's not necessarily wasn't writing something sort of its time. He was writing something that would exist outside of time. I did come a little bit prepared because I haven't read it for a while. It's probably the book I've read more than any other book, to be honest. And maybe I'm due another Lord of the Rings, scan through. The last time I read it, I wanted to read it because I had that similar to what you're saying about like the natural connection. I had this like the thing that resonated with me about the book was the way in which it treated the natural world and how the characters seem to flow from that, and everything seemed to be very harmonious. And then when I read it again, I had that overwhelming feeling for the first half of the first book, and then the rest of it is like, that stuff is suddenly in peril, and everything's about going to war and all these like battles and stuff. I'm thinking, well, that it's good, but I want to go back to like the Garden of Eden stuff. I want to just hang out with Tom Bombadil for the next 500 pages or whatever it is. So that first half of the first book is absolutely like flawless to me. To me, that just it resonates beyond anything else I've read. But then the rest of it is great, but it doesn't. It's great in a different way. You know what I mean? So maybe I need to read it again anyway and catch up, because I remember I was trying to think. There's a bit that's not in the movies where they run into some elves, but still in the Hobbit lands very early on, and one of the elves says something that for some reason I was remembering. It says something like very wise, and I was thinking I'm going to do that for the mindfulness. And I couldn't remember what the elf was called because it's a character who doesn't come back, and I couldn't find the quote, so I just took out another guess. Just okay, plan B, Gandalf quotes. It's Google search. Here we go. So the official mindfulness of the back of all of that stuff is Gandalf saying, it's a very good quote too. Good old Gandalf. Like you said, he's a champion. He's always locked and loaded with something clever to say. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us.
Yeah, I've got the big one here as well. Not all those wander are lost.
That's
I think that's the.
Yeah, I do remember that one.
Yeah, that's the headline one. But yeah, Gandalf. And the other thing about Gandalf, like, he's willing to die. He dies and he comes back. He transformed from the grey to the white. So shout out to Gandalf.
Very, very sort of very Jesus-y in that way. It's fitting the bill, I suppose, for how he's structured in that story. You know who else is a big Lord of the Rings fan? Our favorite player, Chico Geraldes, is
really
chucked on his Instagram story the other day that he was watching the extended cuts as well of the movies after the Phoenix game. I think this is after he got back from watching the women's game too. So, good on him. Settling in nicely.
I'd offer another apology. Like, I just feel bad now because Chico Geraldes loves Aotearoa. The book, like, shout out to Bombadil, because like the movies are one thing, but the books are just like they're so different. They're so much better than the movies. And yeah, Bombadil, big man Bombadil. I'm gonna try and incorporate Bombadil into my into my dialect. So I might just give it
That's
a
one thing about the films, which I'm like, they're long enough as it is, and then there's extended cuts on top of that. But I'm actually glad they never tried to find a Tom Bombadil way to get that in, because to me that feels like it belongs to the book and the book only. Like, you got to leave some things in there, and I just don't see how you could capture that in a film without it just looking silly. Like that's just going to be a fat jolly dude or dancing with flowers or whatever. But in the book, he's like the persona, like he's the closest one to like a deity in the whole story. I just don't see how they could have done that justice in the movies. So they didn't, and I think that was a wise decision.
big up Bombadil, Bombadil, Bombadil. That's just a good word, Bombadil. I'm going to drop it in my casual dialect. The one quote I really am going to write down though is it's either about the Aotearoa vitamins or it's about tobacco. And I don't know if J.R. Tolkien was off the Aotearoa vitamins, maybe the English vitamins at the time. But there's
Big pipe smoker, I believe.
Yeah, there's a lot of pipe smoking. There's a lot of smoking going on throughout the Lord of the Rings. You've got Merry and Pippin stealing the stash from Saruman. You've got like making sure they're packing the vitamins with them for the journeys and everyone. Like Gandalf smoking, Aragorn smoking, like it's just a big old reefer party for the Lord of the Rings fellowship. But there's like this exchange between Peregrine, I think it's Merry or Pippin, one of the two, and Aragorn. And Aragorn and like Mary's like, oh, should we smoke? And Aragorn's like, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I need to make sure I write down the quote because it's a fantastic quote about probably about tobacco, but let's just say it's about Aotearoa vitamins.
Easily translatable.
Another dude who I'm pretty sure likes a bit of the Lord of the Rings is Stephen Adams. And first of all, he's playing pretty well at the moment. He strung together 5 games of 20 plus minutes, then took a game off and then played 12 minutes. But also Houston Rockets are winning a few games. But we got a bit of the Wayne Bennett curse with Stephen Adams. Wayne Bennett, good coach, comes in, changes your franchise, changes your club. Then he leaves, your club becomes shit. That's just how Wayne Bennett and the NRL operate. Stephen Adams comes through. The only team that didn't get worse was the Oklahoma City Thunder, so shout out to them. But
they got worse at first, but they kind of got worse deliberately. Like that's why they traded him, is because they're like, he's too good for us to be as bad as we want to be. And now they're amazing again because they went on the full, they committed to the roller coaster.
Goes to New Orleans Pelicans. He leaves there. Some shit happens with their star player. They just become like a nothing NBA team. Goes to Memphis Grizzlies. Helps them. Cultural leader. He's trying to keep them together through their own little dramas that they've got. American dramas with the old gunfinger salutes and all that stuff happening. He leaves the Memphis Grizzlies, and now they've fired their coach, and he's in a better situation at the Houston Rockets. So I think it's a certainty right now that if you move on from Stephen Adams, you need to expect that you'll get worse. Like, that's just how it is. Undeniable at this point.
It's part and parcel of being one of the most underrated players for the value that he brings to a team. As everyone at the Grizzlies were talking constantly about, like, such a great dude. He's always helping out. He's taught us so much, and he does the 1%ers and all the stuff, the screens, the offensive rebounding. They talk about how great his impact is, and then they traded him. And the funniest part about it is they traded him, and then in the draft they picked Zach Edey, who was the closest thing to Stephen Adams in that draft available. So it's like, why didn't you just keep Stephen Adams? why are you doing this? But it probably worked out for the better because he's ended up on a Houston Rockets team, which feels like it's built in the same way as the Memphis Grizzlies were built, except with a better coach and more engaged star players and stronger senior leadership around, like, other than Stephen Adams. things that Memphis Grizzlies obviously lacked. And I'm a little bit surprised that Taylor Jenkins lasted as long as he did. People were surprised at the firing. I thought maybe the firing would have come sooner, because it seemed to me quite obvious that he, as a coach, had not, at the risk of sounding too much like a businessman here, like had not maximized their potential, you know. And a lot of that was, you had Steven Adams. You had a guy like that who's been on winning teams wherever he goes, who does things which, sure, they don't show up as like points, rebound. Well, he gets the rebounds, but he gets some assists for his position as well. But he's not going to be out there being a top scorer or anything. And yet, it's a known thing that offensive rebounds and screens and stuff like this will make, like, those are winning plays that help you get, you know, they help you score more points than your opponents. They help you win basketball games. And I don't know, even at the Houston Rockets, it doesn't feel like that's fully appreciated. But that might just be a situation of like, yeah, we're starting to get there a bit more. They got Alperen Sengun, and he's awesome. So you can't give Steven Adams 30 minutes a night or anything like that. You probably shouldn't be anyway after he's missed 2 years of basketball with a bad knee. So it's probably the low-key nature of the season he's having is probably the best thing for the rest of his career in terms of just ramping him up to continue on in the NBA for the next few years. But we are starting to see that double big formation a whole lot more. And we are, like you said, we're starting to see him, because they're able to balance him with Sengun, he's pushing up more around that 20-minute mark. And I still think when the playoffs come around, we're going to see a pretty impactful, pretty important Steven Adams figure in that Houston Rockets team. At least I hope so. I might be clouded by my own bias, but it seems like we're pointing in that direction.
I mean, the whole podcast is our Aotearoa bias, so no need to highlight that there. Bring it back closer to home in the local basketball scene, New Zealand NBL. We've got 4 teams who have had 1 loss. Tauranga 5, Franklin Bulls, they're 4-1. Canterbury Rams, Taranaki Airs are 3-1. I did catch a bit of the Canterbury game where they were winning. It was good. And then the team that's gone back-to-back with New Zealand NBL championships, they empty their bench for the last, 40 seconds, and they've got a couple of 17-year-olds. They're joking in commentary, like, all these dudes are going to be at school tomorrow. I'm like, that's not only the story of New Zealand sport, but it's also the story of the Canterbury Rams and the Canterbury region with the amount of talent they are producing. Like, the best team that's just gone back-to-back with, like, legends, Taylor Britt, Max Darling. I do like that Isaac dude, Kaya Isaac.
Which one? Kaya Isaac, yeah. Tama Isaac, both brothers.
They're getting a lot of game time. They're doing some great stuff. And that's Canterbury basketball. So shout out to Canterbury basketball. You've mentioned Carlin Davison before. Taranaki is a 4th with that 3-1 record. Carlin Davison shooting 52% from the 3-point line. And that's it. Like, that's the thing you've highlighted throughout the season. If Carlin Davison's shooting 3-pointers, then he might be taking a big leap forward. And is he still around the Breakers with the change in ownership that's just happened? And most importantly, a change but a return to the most logical way to build a New Zealand sporting franchise, where you're developing local talent, you're connecting to the community, and it's all about basketball in New Zealand. So thank you to whoever the fuck was the previous owners for making us appreciate how to properly run a New Zealand sporting franchise. Because the new owners, they've gone straight back into the Breakers dynasty ways of connection to the community, celebrating Kiwi basketball, and they seem like they are going to do similar investments to the Warriors, the Wellington Phoenix, Auckland FC, in how they develop talent. But my question, though, is about Davison. Is Davison still around the Breakers? Is he going to be with the Breakers next season? Does he have that opportunity ahead of him?
He certainly does. The Breakers, I think, have 6 players under contract, like from last year, for their full roster, plus all their development players. I think had signed new deals or first deals last year, and they were all like 1+1 type deals. So the DPs, that's Alex McNaught, that's Kaya Isaac, that's Carlin Davison. They're all probably coming back as development players on top of who are the 6 players that they have? Wrote it down somewhere, but I can't remember. Um, they they should be back as development players. But I was writing about this in the newsletter yesterday. I did float out the idea of like, well, Carlin Davison's been that good to start the New Zealand NBL, and also I thought did really well in the limited opportunities, but increasingly increasing opportunities that he got towards the end of last season. New ownership have said they'll honor all the contracts that they inherited, by the way, as far as the playing stuff. They've got rid of all 7 of the full-time staff outside of the basketball team, but they're going to keep the basketball structures that they had. Like the players who are under contract are going to stay, the coach is going to stay, which is fair enough, even though a couple of the players that are under contracts probably shouldn't have been signed in the first place. So I mean, it might be a possibility to wrangle out a 1 or 2 of those. We'll see what happens. But as far as Carlin Davison goes, I did float out the idea when I was going through in the newsletter all the different, just the situations of all the players the New Zealanders who played in the Aussie NBL last season and where they are currently with their contracts. So I did float out the idea of like, yeah, he's pretty much guaranteed to be back as a development player, but maybe he's doing well enough. He's shown enough progress that you actually, like they did with Max Darling at the same time last season, elevate him to a full roster spot and say like you're actually better than a development player now. So I wrote that down as a theory in the newsletter, published the newsletter, jumped on Twitter, and then Olgun Olich was tweeting about stuff and said, by the way, Carlin Davison has had his contract upgraded, so his next year is going to be a full roster contract. So I maybe should have checked that before I pressed publish, and then I could have written it as a confirmed thing. But it has happened. I checked the theory out, and then I won't say I spoke it into existence because it had actually slightly already happened when I typed that, but it did happen.
Are there any other any NBL wrinkles that you're tracking as far as Australian NBL opportunities opening up for the lads playing in Aotearoa right now?
Well, from a club perspective, I know you're probably asking about players there, but from a club perspective, there's a pretty big opportunity that's opened up with the Breakers suddenly taking New Zealand basketball seriously again. So, like that is actually a massive factor in the free agency period that's just starting. Is now players like, I don't know, say let's use Flynn Cameron as an example, had a he had a mutual option for his 3rd and final year with the Melbourne United side, which means that I think either a party could opt out of it. And it sounds like, well, they don't say who opted out of it, but it sounds like it was probably Flynn Cameron's decision to opt out of it and will not be returning to Melbourne United. And my suspicion is that that would have something to do with the fact that Shaylee and Matthew Dellavedova are ahead of him in the guard picking order. And he probably thinks correctly so, coming into his 3rd year in the NBL, he's worth a starting spot somewhere else. And he might be able to get a starting spot somewhere else, and that's hopefully what he's looking for. Well, Flynn Cameron was a gun coming out of college. Like, it was clear he was the best New Zealand prospect of that year. I can't remember if that's the same. I think it was the year after not Sam Meninga, the year after Sam Wardenberg, who's just re-signed with Cairns Taipans. Curiously, despite how bad Cairns were last season, he's opted in for another season. Flynn Cameron, it seemed a little bit pointed that he didn't even really seem to consider the Breakers as an option, and that was part of, like, Wardenberg was another one, a Kiwi coming out of college, didn't sign with the Breakers. Yanni Wetzel the year before him didn't sign with the Breakers, then did actually sign with the Breakers the next year after that, but it didn't happen the first time around. That might have more to do with the Breakers not investing in players. Like, they're not looking for New Zealand players. They're not going after those guys and saying these guys as Kiwis might add something a little bit extra to our team that they won't add to other teams, just because they didn't care about that. That was that era. But you also had instances of like, the Webster brothers and Rob Lowe and Shaylee, maybe most famously. Shaylee actually has a what do you call it? Well, no, he doesn't have an option. He's actually a free agent. His contract's expired. So, but I think because Flynn Cameron's leaving, I think that's a pretty big hint that Shaylee will re-sign with Melbourne United. Because if he was going to leave, surely Cameron stays and tries to get the spot that Ellie would have left open for him. I think the fact that Cameron's opted out means that Ellie will just re-sign with Melbourne. But he'll have interest from anywhere. He's the best defender in the competition. But he was another example, the first example really, of Kiwi players deliberately leaving the Breakers during the last era. So hopefully that's changed now. Like hopefully Dylan Boucher's on board. Maybe signing Dylan Boucher to be a president of basketball operations is maybe the most deliberate thing you could possibly do without saying it explicitly, that the next era is going to be not just different from the era that came before, but like they're going to do the exact opposite. Like the things that Matt Walsh's Breakers weren't doing, the Mark Mitchell Breakers absolutely are going to do, starting with signing the general manager who's just spent so long doing great work with ever since in between his previous Breakers stint with Basketball New Zealand, like specifically helping out at a time where basketball in New Zealand is probably the strongest it's been, and Dylan Boucher deserves credit for the way he's facilitated that. He obviously didn't start it, but he's supplied an environment where good Kiwi ballers have been able to come through and succeed in ways that they haven't done in previous eras. So that's fantastic. And obviously, Dylan Boucher was the general manager at the Breakers when the previous regime came in, and then he quit because, without saying it, it was pretty obvious he just didn't like the direction they were going in. Well, you hire him back, that's a pretty obvious, middle finger towards the direction of the previous owners. Even though Mitchell, the new owner fella, is carefully avoiding making that a direct thing. They've also brought the Blackwells are back in the directorship roles and minority investor roles, sort of thing. The emphasis on building up an academy again, developing players in the Breakers, like all these things are stuff that the Matt Walsh era team went against. Like he's not the new fella doesn't seem to want to say it outright, which is diplomatic of him. That's nice of him, but all his actions point towards this being a complete opposite of what happened before. So that's good, and that will create opportunities potentially now for players who have great relationships with Dylan Boucher through New Zealand basketball to actually want to play for the Breakers. And so top of that list clearly should be Flynn Cameron, right? Like he's probably the best New Zealander currently open as a free agent in this league, outside of guys like perhaps Yanni Wetzel, Finn Delaney, Isaac Fotu, who are playing overseas, who might want to come back. That's a possibility. I wouldn't bank on those things happening, but certainly I think the promise of a new era of Breakers is definitely a selling point for these free agents. And yeah, as far as I see it, the first thing they needed to do was upgrade that Carlin Davison contract, because that was just there waiting to happen. The next thing they should be doing is trying to sign Flynn Cameron.
I do first of all, it's always actions over words. So I don't care what you're saying or not saying.
That is true. That is true.
The actions always speak louder than the words, and the actions from the new ownership group are pretty loud. I also am
and the
aware...
words from the previous ownership group were pretty loud. The actions weren't, but the words were.
Well, the actions were loud.
Well, the actions were loud. They just did the opposite of what the word. Like there was a lot of promise to, we hear you, we're listening to what you're saying. We're going to do things better. We're going to bring that Kiwi core, and then they just didn't. Like they just didn't. They'd say one thing and then it wouldn't happen.
Your point is valid, but their actions were also completely their actions spoke for themselves. So I literally don't care what you're saying, whether it's good or bad. It's all about what you do. The previous ownership group did things one way, regardless of what they're saying, and the new ownership group is doing things one way, regardless of what they're saying. And I'm also aware of this is good, I reckon, because we had a official collaboration between the Wellington Phoenix and New Zealand football a few months ago. The Warriors and New Zealand Rugby League are working a lot more. They're working together more these days than they had been previously. And now we're seeing greater crossover between New Zealand basketball and the New Zealand Breakers. And I think these are just good things for the sports because in the cricket pipeline especially, we've seen how effective it can be when everyone's moving and grooving together. You mentioned the Carlin Davison little thing you said about him actually having a contract. I had the same thing with Rhys Mariu because I've been following this maybe too closely because I've driven myself insane. Rhys Mariu, he was a few runs behind Nick Kelly as the leading run scorer, and I wanted it to happen because it would be cool to have 3 young batters leading the run scoring in all 3 competitions this summer. For those who don't know, Curtis Heafy, 21-year-old, he was the leading run scorer in the Ford Trophy for, he's the leading run scorer in general, and he plays for Central Districts. Best batter in the Super Smash, Matt Boyle, 22 years old from Canterbury. And then we had Rhys Mariu chasing Nick Kelly as the leading run scorer in the Plunket Shield. That would have just put a nice bow on the summer in my eyes. But then Nick Kelly gets called up to the Blackcaps. So now it's like, oh, this is definitely going to happen for Rhys Mariu. But then Rhys Mariu gets called up to the Blackcaps as well. So I don't know if it's going to happen. But then Rhys Mariu is playing in the game for Canterbury. Big game versus Wellington. And Rhys Mariu is batting in the first innings. He gets 16 runs. Okay, Rhys Mariu. Now he's 2 runs behind Nick Kelly. This is going to make the last innings really interesting for me. And Rhys Mariu is not there. He's gone. He's not playing. And he's obviously been moved up to the Blackcaps. Hopefully we will see him make his ODI debut in one of the 2 remaining ODIs for the Blackcaps against Pakistan, which are being played, I think we're on Wednesday in Hamilton, Saturday in Tauranga at the Bay Oval in the suburb of Tauranga known as Mount Maunganui, next to the place of worship for the people of the area. So it was a whirlwind of like, okay, Rhys Mariu, you can do it. He can't do it. And I wrote it in the newsletter, but then he's not batting in the second inning. So it's completely false information. So I just like messed around in my own head and misled the readers about what Rhys Mariu was up to. So that was kind of crazy and it was a bummer. But we do have Plunket Shield games happening right now. Northern Districts are playing against Otago heading into day 4. This is day 4, Tuesday, the 1st of April. Otago need 287 runs to win. And Northern Districts, I'm not going to do all the maths, but let's just keep it simple. Northern Districts are first on 89 points. Then we have Wellington versus Canterbury. Canterbury need 364 runs to win in the last over. Wellington need 7 wickets. Wellington is second on 82 points. Canterbury are third on 80 points. So I'm not sure how it's all going to happen. I don't know who's best positioned. Obviously, Northern Districts are first. But obviously, we'll be keeping it a close eye on that today. And you can stay tuned for a lot more Plunket Shield information. We did have a early result between Central Districts and Auckland. Auckland were dismissed for 184. Central scores 219. Auckland's all out for 90. Central scores 56 for 1 to seal the win. That means Central Districts are fourth. Auckland finished last on 1 win. Maybe no, Otago will get some points, I reckon. So that will keep Auckland in last place. One thing about Central Districts, there's a couple of things like Jaden Lennox has been fantastic back into the summer where spin bowlers, the spinny bombardoos, become a lot more important late in the summer. So he's taken a lot of wickets in recent games. Took 4 in the first innings and 3 in the second innings. Blair Tickner, 8 wickets in the match, 3 in the first innings, 5 in the second innings. Like, speaking of leading run scorers, Curtis Heafy, 21-year-old. He scored 51 runs opening the batting in the first innings, and he is definitely going to be one of my top 10 young cricketers at the end of the summer, which is a yarn I did last year, and I'll be preparing to do it again this year. He is 21 years old, averaging 36.2 in first-class cricket, 55.6 in list day one-day cricket. Also, be rude not to reflect on his Super Smash T20 mahi. He's got a T20 average of 25.9, strike rate of 110. But remember when Central Districts were going through their Super Smash Championship run, Curtis Heafy was scoring runs in different positions for Central Districts. So his T20 record isn't as swashbuckling as his other formats, and as, like, you know, Matt Boyle smashing it, Bevan Jacobs smashing it, and so on. But he did play a sneaky important role for the championship winning Central Stags in the Super Smash. So that's a very good indicator of his talent. Just a little bit of preparation work for the 10 best young cricketers in New Zealand. Obviously, Rhys Mariu won't be in the mix if he plays for New Zealand, because these are guys who are yet to play for New Zealand. We got Curtis Heafy, we got Matt Boyle. Bevan Jacobs hasn't played for New Zealand, so he's probably going to be there. We've got someone like Jock McKenzie, Luke Georgeson, Christian Clark, Matt Fisher, Cameron Paul, Max Chu, Ben Pomare, Simon Keane, Thorne Parks, Jamal Todd, Lou Johnson. They're all in the equation. So I'm not sure how I'm going to narrow it down to 10 players, but I will. And we will be publishing that over the next few days. 10 best young cricketers from New Zealand at the end of the summer who are yet to play for the Blackcaps. And it is Neil Wagner's. He's retiring from Plunket Shield cricket. He hit 25 not out off 11 deliveries, 3 fours, 1 6. Then he bowled and he took 3 wickets. Then Northern Districts batted, and they opened the batting with Scott Kugelheim, who hit 71 off 26 balls, 3 fours, 8 sixes. And Neil Wagner, last 2 innings of Plunket Shield cricket, not out in both innings, 27 not out off 11 deliveries, no fours, 3 wickets. And they're trying to bowl Otago out at the time of recording, and he's already got 1 wicket. But, I mean, Bombadil Jet Raval, 4 wickets in the first innings, already got 2 wickets in the second innings. Jet Raval, the leggies are working well for old Jerry Jet Raval. So that's good stuff there. And also, Bombadil Brett Hampton, he has picked up a county championship opportunity with Hampshire. So he's going to be playing there. And obviously, we do follow the county championship cricketers very closely. Got a monster crew preparing to go to England and play county cricket. Brett Hampton, very good all-rounder, but he's another one of these dudes, and this will take us into the Blackcaps. Like, we know what Brett Hampton does. Somehow Brett Hampton's better at hitting sixes in the Plunket Shield and the Ford Trophy than the Super Smash. Like, he just smashes sixes in the 4-day format, the 1-day format, but he isn't as effective as a T20 player. But he's a very good all-rounder, good T20 bowler, and he's a very good batter who the only dude who hits just as many or more sixes in domestic cricket is Bevan Jacobs. And I want to see Brett Hampton just have a couple of innings in England where he just smashes sixes. That would be great. So hopefully we can make that happen. And we'll be tracking all the other dudes, so stay tuned over the winter for the Kiwi County Tour. Then we go into Blackcaps. So they had a win in the first ODI against Pakistan. Mark Chapman century. Daryl Mitchell scored some runs. Muhammad Abbas on debut. Big old knock and a couple of overs as well with his lefty seam. Nathan Smith took 4 wickets, and it was a good bowling performance. As I said, the second ODI is tomorrow. This is what has become clear to me in recent days is how I think this is a pretty good sign of a good development pipeline where you've got this young talent coming through, right? Like Zach Fox, Mitch Hay, let alone all the domestic cricketers, let alone someone like, someone like Bevan Jacobs now in the IPL yet to play, Tim Robinson, Will O'Rourke, Nathan Smith on the rise. But you've also got these dudes who are older who are getting better. Now, do you remember a few summers ago, a lot of the Kiwi media made big noise. They were very loud about how there were too many dudes over 30 years old in the Blackcaps. And yes, there's a lot of young talent rising up for the Blackcaps. But the guys who are new contributors, they're still they're 30 years old. And if the guys who are over 30 years old keep performing, getting better, who cares about their age? You can't just say, oh, there's too many guys over the age of 36 for this team. That's not good. Oh, there's too many guys under the age of 23. We can't have that. No, you just who's scoring the runs? Who's taking the wickets? Because at every stage of the New Zealand cricket development pipeline, you need to be scoring runs. You need to take wickets to move up because someone else is. If you're not doing it, someone else is. And that's the case for Mark Chapman. He's 30 years old and he is in career best form for New Zealand. Since the start of 2024, he's played 7 games, a century, 3 50s in his 6 innings, averaging 76 with a strike rate of 104. But he wasn't good enough to be in the Champions Trophy first 11, but I think he should be in the first 11 moving forward. I don't think Devon Conway might come back. But we've got someone like Mark Chapman. He deserves to be there. Daryl Mitchell scored runs. He made his debut in his late 20s, and he just keeps getting better. He is already one of the best ODI batters ever for New Zealand. He is on track, as crazy as it sounds, Daryl Mitchell is on track to be one of New Zealand's best ever batters.
I'm pretty sure there was a Blackcaps stat about how because that was his 50th ODI, I think, in the first game against Pakistan, and I think they said he scored more ODI runs than any other New Zealander in their first 50 ODIs. So on track that's on track.
He's on track to do that. Michael Bracewell, here's a good one for you. Michael Bracewell, he debuted after he turned 30, so he debuted 3 years ago, and he's 34 right now, I think. He has played more games for New Zealand than his cousin Doug.
All of that debuted really young.
All of that happened for Michael Bracewell after he turned 30, and he has grown into a first 11 all-rounder, now a captain for New Zealand. Jacob Duffy. He's been absolutely awesome this summer. In ODI cricket, he's averaging 25, 6 games. But he's also had a fantastic T20 summer. Let me pull this up to be exact and precise. Because Jacob Duffy, he is also 30 years old. He made his debut. T20 debut was at the end of 2020. And he is now a very good Blackcaps bowler. This summer in T20 international bowling, he's averaging 9.7. He's getting better. And the beautiful thing here is that if you're not getting better, if you're not performing, you're going to lose your spot in the team because there's so much depth. But we need, like, this is a good sign of a good development system where you got older players getting better, younger players on the rise, and they're all filling the spots in between. But also we need to just first we need to release any attachment we had to New Zealand was only good because they had a golden generation. I know we still got some good cricketers. We're still winning games without Kane Williamson, Tim Southey, Trent Boult, Ross Taylor, BJ Watling. We're still winning games without Neil Wagner. I mean, jar forbid we win games without Devon Conway. It happens. But we've also got the youngsters on the rise. Ravindra, Will O'Rourke, Nathan Smith. It was good to see him take his 4 wickets because I think he is a bowler who hasn't had the rewards as far as wickets goes, but he did get the wickets. It's like if you bowl well, you might not pick up wickets in the top order, but then you might pick up the lower order wickets and you still get your wickets. Now, sure, you can get really analytical and say, oh, he only just, this innings, he didn't dismiss any top order batters. He doesn't get batters who average over 60 out, whatever you want to say. But the cricketing forces, in a more esoteric sense, they reward you for your good bowling if you just get a few cheap wickets at the end. And that's not necessarily what Nathan Smith did, but it is to say Nathan Smith's a good cricketer. He's a good all-rounder. He should be playing for New Zealand, but he's not had an easy introduction to Blackcaps cricket. Test the couple no balls, he's getting hit around by England. ODIs, he's getting smashed around, but he's always taken a wicket or two, and then he has a game where the cricketing deities are in his favour, and he takes his forfeit. Again, that is to say we've got a lot of youngsters on the rise. Now, Rhys Mariu was in the Blackcaps. I forgot what I was about to say about Heafy. So Heafy averages 55 in one-day cricket. That is far better than Rhys Mariu. Rhys Mariu has a one-day batting average of 27. But the thing about Rhys Mariu is he has a first-class batting average of 61.7. So Rhys Mariu has a far better first-class average. Curtis Heafy has a far better one-day average. But Mariu is in the one-day team. He's in the one-day squad. But to me, this again just goes back. This is part of the Blackcaps development system. Mariu's a little bit older, a little bit more mature, but that's not really that important. But they have identified him as one of probably the best pure batter right now on the rise. And we got more of them. We got Heafy, we got Boyle, we got Bevan Jacobs. We got kind of an endless supply of good cricketers coming through. So don't worry. Heafy will get his opportunity. Boyle will get his opportunity. But there's the best format for developing players right now is ODI cricket because there's no major tournament coming up. The best format to develop players is also one-day cricket in general. Because that is the format where you use all the skills available. You need to bat time. You need to up the ante. You need dot balls. You need to build pressure. You need to bowl Yorkers. You need your slower balls. It's the best format incorporating all the skills. And I think it is a great development place to enter international cricket. But then you throw in the context of what format is most important, what format is better used for development right now. T20 squad, Seifert, Finn Allen, Ish Sodhi, they're all there because they're building towards the T20 World Cup. ODIs against Pakistan, Ashok comes in for Ish Sodhi. Now we got Rhys Mariu. Now we got Muhammad Abbas. The youngsters are getting an opportunity in a format where there is less pressure to perform right now because of the schedule. And B, one-day cricket, I think, is the best format for development in general. So that's putting Rhys Mariu, who I do believe is the best pure batter on the rise, putting him in the one-day squad to me is a sign of how they view their development structures, which isn't rocket science. Like, you just got to figure out what's the important format. But then we get to Muhammad Abbas, who's already played. He's already smashed the 50. He's already taken a wicket, and he's already shown how awesome Muhammad Abbas is. This is why you need to watch the Super Smash. He did this in Napier. I think he's done it twice before in Napier. I think he did it this summer. I think he did it last summer. Like, he has been doing this for a couple of seasons now in general with bat, a little bit with ball. He did bowl more overs than I expected. He was used as the fifth bowler. To me, that was a case of it's a bouncier Napier pitch. The next two ODIs, they're in Hamilton and Tauranga, where it's a little bit more spin friendly. So that's when I think we're going to see Ashok come into the team, but I think they can still select the bus in that team. How do you get Ashok in? I think you drop Henry Nichols.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time for old Hank.
Shout out
but
to
you
Henry
could easily
Nichols.
at the same time you could bring you need your seamers though. I was thinking like someone like Nathan Smith or something, but the point is to make Ashok the sixth bowler, not the fifth one, so you can't drop a bowler. So
But
sorry.
make a
Sorry, Mr.
Bus the
Nichols.
sixth bowler. Ashok's the fifth bowler, Bus the sixth bowler. So
Yeah,
in that
yeah,
sense,
yeah.
like, so Will Young's out, then you bring in Rhys Mariu to open. Cool, Henry Nichols, good effort, 11 off 25 balls. He's gone. Chapman goes to 3, Daryl Mitchell to 4. You can go Abbas 5, Bracewell 6, Mitch Hayes 7. Then you've still got all your seamers and you've got Ashok. That's a great team. That's a really good cricket team. But I do think Abbas this summer, he averaged 6 overs per Plunket Shield game. He averaged 3 overs per Ford Trophy game. He averaged 2 overs per Super Smash game. All of those are less than his 7 overs in ODI debut. The closest is 6 overs in Plunket Shield, where there's no restrictions on how many overs you can bowl. One day cricket, 7 overs in ODI debut, 3 overs in Ford Trophy debut. Very tricky spot to put Abbas in as a lefty seamer. Got the speed gun on him. He's bowling 127, hit 130 a few times, so that was good. That's really good all-round lefty pace, I reckon. A lot of pressure as the fifth bowler. But again, it's a good development exercise. Not a lot of, there's actually not a lot of pressure because it's an ODI against Pakistan and Napier at the end of March. And he showed he can bowl those overs. He didn't need to bowl 10 overs because New Zealand's bowling was so good, they got them all out. So it was it's kind of this Blackcap stuff that we're talking through right now. It's that duality. It's the light and the dark, the yin and the yang. It's the pie and the avocado. Where you've got the senior players who just keep getting better. But the young talent we have on the rise is awesome. And Muhammad Abbas showed it. But is Muhammad Abbas better than Mark Chapman? Not right now. Jacob Duffy, somehow, Will O'Rourke's awesome, but right now, formats we're working in, Will O'Rourke, is he better than Jacob Duffy? Not right now. Evan Jacobs, he's a big hitter. He's awesome. Is he a better cricketer for New Zealand than Michael Bracewell? Not right now. So you've got they're kind of working against each other, but more importantly, they're just happening alongside each other for the betterment of New Zealand cricket.
But that's exactly why the stress about how old the Blackcaps might be doesn't matter, because first of all, you pick your best players, whatever's going to get the win on the day, and if that means a team of a bunch of guys over 30, well, that's kind of when cricketers hit their peak. It's kind of when cricket, especially batters, at their best, is in those ages. the only reason to stress about that is the idea that, well, maybe a 36-year-old is going to retire soon. Like, he might be good enough now, because if you're not good enough, it doesn't matter how old you are, someone else will be playing better and you get dropped. Like, whether you're 23 or 33 or 43, it doesn't matter. If you're good enough to be in the first 11, but you're aging out of the team and you might retire soon, and therefore it becomes a future planning thing. It's like, well, there's a lot of old players here, we might have to replace them soon. Well, every time someone younger has been given the opportunity, and younger means a 30-year-old, or it might mean Muhammad Abbas at like 21, they seem to go pretty well. There's clearly no lack of depth. And if there's no lack of depth, there's no struggle in replacing guys when they retire. And if there's no struggle in replacing guys when they retire, it doesn't matter if they're still playing at 36 or above or whatever, 34 in Michael Bracewell's case, or, that it doesn't matter, because everyone is replaceable. In a way, that doesn't mean to diminish those players and how good they are. It just means that there's good players everywhere. And as guys like Michael Bracewell and Daryl Mitchell prove, you don't stop developing as a cricketer when you hit your 30th birthday. Those guys have gone on to far greater, like where Daryl Mitchell was when he first played for the Blackcaps, where he was like a lower order hitter and a genuine all-rounder who had bowled some seam up. He never bowls anymore. He's just a straight up amazing batter in all three formats too. Like, he's a different player than he was back then. It's not just that he's got better at what he did. It's like he's specialized in a different way than what he used to do. Like, that's how much development these guys can continue to show throughout their careers. Once you start playing internationally, you're playing at a higher level, so you're also exposed to more opportunities to develop in that way too. So getting to play in different conditions and all this kind of stuff, testing your technique, facing different challenges. There's really no reason to stress about that at all. The fringe players seem to get better, and the young guys seem to step up as well. There's nothing to worry about. I think maybe a point that we've mentioned before, but the biggest holder point in that argument about the stress over the ages of players was how people were stressing about the Blackcaps having too many senior players, and then Neil Wagner got dropped, and people were stressing about Neil Wagner being dropped. Like, well, you can't have both of those things. It's one of them is completely contradictory to the other. So the Blackcaps are just in a solid place, and whenever we get these kind of late season tours by Pakistan or Sri Lanka or Bangladesh or whoever, admittedly favorable conditions for guys to come in and do well, but like, no one else has ever hit a 50 on debut faster than Muhammad Abbas just did.
I think there's a lot of similarities with the Warriors as well, because we have seen all these players leave the Warriors, right? So everyone was like, oh, how on earth will the Warriors survive without Sean Johnson? How on earth will the Warriors survive without Tohu Harris, Marcelo Montoya? Everyone else. Dylan Walker, everyone else. Josh Curran, Zion Mayu. Like, how are the Warriors going to survive without those dudes? And that's very similar to how folks reflected on that previous kind of Blackcaps era. Like, wait, the Blackcaps are going to move on from Neil Wagner? How's that possible? We've got this big, tall dude who bowls 140 Ks per hour and smashes hands. He smashed Aussie hands. He smashes everyone's hands in Will O'Rourke, and we got a bunch more coming up. Like, that's how it's possible. And it's pretty similar for the Warriors. Warriors had a good win against the Tigers in Sydney. I think the best part of this win was the conditions. It was pissing down in Sydney, and it was a hostile environment. Now, of course, Aussies, they don't necessarily want to admit that all their crowds are bigger when they play the Warriors. So there were Warriors fans there. You can see it. When the Warriors score, you just see all these hands up in the air. You see all these like dudes and women and children being happy that the Warriors scored. But it was also a hostile environment as far as being away, rainy conditions. I mean, somehow, like, the worst case scenario for a Warriors fan when Ed Cossey is called up is that Ed Cossey has to catch a lot of balls. I'm pretty sure every single kickoff went to Ed Cossey in the rain. And a lot of Warriors fans, they have like trauma about Ed Cossey dropping the ball. Somehow, some way, those kickoffs just kept going to Ed Cossey. The bombs went to Ed Cossey, and he just caught everything. So that kind of reflects the Warriors' performance as far as tough conditions, tough environment. But they did pretty well to maintain their basic skills and their basic efforts. And, I mean, if you didn't know by now, the Warriors play the long game. They are patient. They are grinders. They will wear you down and win the game late. They won the game late against the Seagulls. They won the game late against the Roosters. And thanks to Leka Halasima's try behind us, Luke Metcalf kicking the conversion, very important conversion, and then Luke Metcalf kicking the penalty, that all happened in the last quarter of the game. That stems from the Warriors having the best completion rate in the NRL still. They still have the best completion rate. It has dropped a wee bit down from 85%, I think it was, heading into the round. It's now 84.6. But they still have the best completion rate in the NRL. As far as stats go, they're also first for post-contact meters. They're also first for dummy half runs. And they are the least penalised team in the NRL. I mean, just right there, that's a good footy team. And it's also, once again, bucks up against all stereotypes of New Zealand Warriors Rugby League. Again, first post-contact meters, first for dummy half runs, first for completion, least penalised team in the NRL. This is 2025 Warriors. They're looking good.
Yeah, I found that game, more than anything, I just found that game extremely entertaining. I thought it was a great game of rugby league, especially in the second half. And I was watching it. It's like let's say I was watching it with your words in my ear, because we were talking about this team after all these games, and so I'm listening. I'm watching, knowing that this is a Warriors team that should be fit enough in the last 10, 15 minutes to target the outcome. That should be like, when they're trailing a little bit there and it's looking a little bit edgy and there's a few mistakes coming in both ways, I'm thinking, yeah, but this, from what I've been told, this is a Warriors team that is set up to finish stronger than their opponent. And then lo and behold, Leka Halasima up the sideline, incredible try. Gave it the big shush as well on its way through, which made me think, well, if you did that at the Dragons, you'd probably get in trouble, because Christian Tuipulotu's not allowed to celebrate tries anymore. And I actually, when they cut to the coach's box in the replay, you could see Stacey Jones was like demonstrably angry as he was running into score, because he obviously didn't run it around under the post like he should have. Like, he had the opportunity to make it an easier kick for Metcalf when they needed the kick. But my main takeaway from that game was really entertaining game of footy. And then my second takeaway from that was, I do like Leka Halasima. When you have someone like that coming off the bench, the youngest guy in the team, scoring a try like that, it was reminiscent of that run he made on debut where he didn't quite score the try. This time he goes all the way through, but barges through a couple tackles towards the end. Good fun. It was an entertaining way for an entertaining game to finish, even though it was actually decided with a penalty goal.
Yeah, on debut, similar run, didn't score the try. First try, people are rightly complaining it doesn't go into the post. Like, which way do you want him? Do you want him to get close with a wondrous run and not score the try? You want him to score the try?
Yeah, the try is the important bit, and he got the kick anyway.
In commentary, they did mention he's an Otahuhu Junior. His NRL profile does say Otahuhu, but to the best of my knowledge, he's a Mangere Jr., who also spent a bit of time at Otahuhu, and like obviously local rugby league, you can chop and change like between a lot of different clubs. So I think I've also seen him, like he popped up playing for Point Chef at some point. I don't know. But to me, he's a Mangere Jr., went to Southern Cross campus, and for anyone wondering, he's going to play for Tonga. Like we've said that before. We've talked about that before. I'm fairly confident he will play for Tonga because he's a very hearty Tongan, as most of them are. So this is to me, this is setting the table. Because you got the Leka Halasima stuff. So on debut, starts through the middle, makes that big run on the right edge. He was playing right center. In this game against the Tigers, and this is a key aspect of Warriors footy right now, is the versatility. Halasima came on when Ed Cossey had the HIA. Halasima played on the left edge. He scored his try on the right edge. So he went to left edge. The Warriors, their versatility allows them to roll with the mid-game situation. So Cossey goes off, Pompey goes to the wing, Capewell goes to centre. In this instance, Halasima went to left edge. It has also been Mitchell Barnett's played a bit of left edge in the past. But then he moves to the right edge to give Niakore a break, and he scores his try. So in the NRL, I have seen Halasima play in the middle, I've seen him play centre, and I've seen him play on both edges. That's just happened for the youngest member of the team. I also thought like Ali Leotawa, he was pretty, like he was solid. Vaimonga was solid apart from trying to punch out the ball instead of actually making a tackle. That was a bit weird, but it's all good. That's like Leka Halasima not running behind the post, right? Like these are just young bucks. They're just like trying to play footy. But it was a very like the consistency of Leotawa and Vaimonga to me is just as important as the X factor that Halasima has shown. So I think that's a very important wrinkle to highlight. Those three youngsters have been pretty good. But then we go Warriors. They're 4-0 in New South Wales Cup. All of their try scorers were younger, early 20s lads. Sio Kelly's 19, Fatialofa 20, Laban's 20, Amatuanai I think is 22, Tanistel Smith is 21. They're the try scorers. That New South Wales Cup team that is 4-0 within their third consecutive season of winning footy, to my knowledge, 13 of the 17 players in that game, they had a win over Western Suburbs. 13 of the 17 players are younger players in their early 20s or teenagers. So all of that is happening below the Halasima hype, right? You got the Halasima hype, but then you've got Leotawa and Vaimonga just playing consistently solid NRL footy, grinding away. Then you've got a New South Wales Cup team that is top of the table, undefeated, third season in a row, winning with a whole lot of youngsters. If you're going club-wide, Jersey Flegg and SG Ball, under 21s, under 19s, they've both won one game. They're both down the bottom of the ladder, but they produce the players that you're seeing. But then you go under 17s, Harold Matthews, they won the championship last year. Right now they're first, 6-1. That's the pipeline right there. That's pretty impressive to me. And now that I think about it, so 13 of the 17 players in New South Wales Cup this weekend, youngsters, but that's 14 out of 18 if you include the 18th man, who was Gary Tuileketu, who is from Wellington, but he's 18th man. He's in his early 20s as well. So that's the landscape the Warriors are working in. So I think the Warriors are a pretty good team right now. But we can only view the Warriors NRL team on the backdrop of how productive their pipeline is. Everyone's seeing Halasima, but there's so many more layers to that pipeline that are they smack you in the face as being obviously awesome if you're actually willing to go look at it. Like early in the 2 games, maybe 1 game, obviously the first game I didn't see shit, but I was still trying to look for patterns and like a style guide. And to me, it was a lot more obvious without Dylan Walker. No Walker, no worries. And it's actually Jackson Ford who tells me that who informs me the most about the Warriors. I think they moved away from that passing style that I loved in 2023. We had Tohu Harris, Dylan Walker. You know, they're going out the back. They're going short ball. And it was like, bro, this is distribution footy at its finest. Now it's less passing. Now it's just like, let's just run the ball. And I think that is an adjustment that Andrew Webster's made. So there's no Andrew Webster style of footy. 2023, there was an Andrew Webster style of footy because the Warriors played a style of footy and won games. But Andrew Webster, this is something that's very important. Webster doesn't have, like, I can only win playing this style of footy. He has adjusted, and the team, whether it's an adjusting to the players he has, whether it's adjusting to how the NRL is played, however you want to frame it, the style of footy has changed. So if we're talking just in terms of replacing Dylan Walker, Vaimunga played 20 minutes for the first time this season, and he had 3 passes, which is the same amount of passes as Fisher Harris. He had 3 passes, and then Aaron Clark had 10 passes. NRL Rugby League, you still need to pass the footy, right? Like that still needs to happen. So you're still going to have passes that need to happen. But the structure, the Walker, Tohu Harris kind of structure around the distribution, that's less prevalent right now. That's not a key focus. So Vaimunga played more minutes and he had a few passes. So I think Vaimunga had an expanded role without Walker. But the key dude is Jackson Ford. Because you look at the style of play, Jackson Ford, he ain't passing the ball. Jackson Ford works really hard, and he's got a good running style. He kind of bounces around. He can run it straight. He gets in between tackles, and he's an absolute post-contact meter eater. So the style of footy, to me, is summed up between Jackson Ford and Dylan Walker. Because Jackson Ford had the same impact that everyone was talking about Dylan Walker. Dylan Walker leaves and everyone's like, oh, I really liked what he did. 20 minutes on, he'd come on, he'd impact the game. It'd add so much. That's literally what Jackson Ford has done. And it's a standout element of their win against the West Tigers. Then you add in the dummy half running. The Warriors have the most dummy half runs in the NRL. Let me compare this to last season, maybe. Last season, they were 7.3, apparently. This season, they're 11.3. They were mid-table. Now they're top of the table for dummy half runs. Wade Egan has 32 dummy half runs this season. Next best is Tom Starling on 18. Twice as many almost. Egan averages 8 dummy half runs per game. Next best is Harry Grant on 5. That reinforces the idea of playing more direct. You got more dummy half running. You got more dudes just running it straight. More Jackson Ford running, less Dylan Walker passing. That kind of paints a general picture on how the Warriors play their footy and how they're going to play their footy without Dylan Walker. There's so many other elements, obviously, like Egan and Nickel Clockstar are my barometers. What did Nickel Clockstar do against Tigers? He caught everything, he mopped everything up, and he took a lot of runs. That is what Nickel Clockstar does. But the thing about the Warriors is like, and it happened in the game against the Tigers. Fisher Harris, Barnett, Clark especially, Jackson Ford working really hard, Neokore's really physical, Kurt Capewell rips in, Vaimunga was powerful against the Tigers. The Tigers had moments, like their forwards had moments. Poles scored a try, Terrell May, he's always pretty good. Like they had moments of getting up over the Warriors forward pack. Like, it's really hard to dominate James Fisher-Harris for the whole game. Not 80 minutes, because he doesn't play 80 minutes, right? Like they have a break. They're 50 minutes, 60 minutes. So if Fisher-Harris is playing for 60 minutes, I don't think you're going to dominate Fisher-Harris for 60 minutes. But then you flip it to the Warriors forward pack. The Tigers forwards had moments. And that is really important because the Warriors played the long game. They just kicked the ball to the opposition, smashed them up, and they kept driving the Tigers back the whole game. 70th minute, they're doing it. 75th minute, they're doing it. So they're just best completion rate in the NRL. Repeat the cycle over and over and over again. Tigers forwards have a few moments. But can you still do that against James Fisher-Harris, Mitchell Barnett, and Aaron Clark 65 minutes in, 75 minutes in? Tigers couldn't do it. And this goes back to what I was thinking, like when Tonga played New Zealand at Mount Smart Stadium. Tier 1, Tier 2, that's disrespectful. But you can't like, Tonga's not necessarily Tier 2, but you can't, like, having these tier systems means, oh, you're Tier 2, so you're meant to be shit. Well, it's not the case. No, like, if New Zealand are playing Tonga at Mount Smart, Tonga's not the underdog. Like, that's not the case.
I mean, they won that game. So
exactly. They win the game because they are just as good as New Zealand, if not better, in front of their home crowd. We can't celebrate International Rugby League and then say, nah, Samoa, you're Tier 2. No, you're just up with the big dogs because everyone's a big dog, because it's International Rugby League. Now we're in the NRL, and like, Tigers, Warriors, that's not a good game based on what happened last year. Like, the Tigers have been shit, so now we have to assume they are shit, but they're a shit team playing well. No, every year in the NRL, you have to re-earn whatever you're doing. You can't predict what's happening right now based on last season. The Tigers, credit to them, they were grinding with the Warriors for 70 minutes. Because they're a good team. But you can't, your whole discussion about the Tigers or the Warriors can't just go back to last season. No, this is how they're playing right now. Because some teams that were good last season, now they're shit. Some teams that were shit last season, now they're good. Every season is different. It's in its own bubble. And to me, that was evident in that Tigers game because they were just two solid teams going at each other for 80 minutes. The reason the Warriors won that game is I think they're slightly better at the long game mentality because that is clearly their style of play. What else do we have for the Warriors? I don't know if there is much more else. Other than highlighting that, like, the club-wide stuff is really important. Again, like, don't worry about the Jersey Flegg results. Don't worry about SG Ball. Even the under-17s, even though it's kind of interesting that the under-17s have had 2 good seasons in a row. It's all about New South Wales Cup. Let me actually go into New South Wales Cup because I think it's very important. Considering that the New South Wales Cup Warriors had 2 good winning seasons with Halasima in the team while he was still at school, with Leatawa, with Waimunga. all of whom are from South Auckland, by the way, like Ali Leotawa, Mangere East, and Papatoe Jr., Dimitri Whaimunga, Otahuhu Jr., who went to De La Salle, Leotawa went to King's College, Halasima, Mangere East, Otahuhu went to Southern Cross Campus. There's actually another player from Southern Cross Campus now in the Warriors New South Wales Cup team, William Whakato-Mawhai, who started with the Warriors, had a stint with the Panthers, had a stint with the North Sydney Bears. Now he's back with the Warriors, and he was on the wing in New South Wales Cup. Very handy pickup because he was a very good kind of junior player, and then he moved to the Panthers. Now he's back on the wing. Very good depth player for the Warriors to have in their system. He wasn't on the radar over the summer. Dayon Amatuanai was on the radar because he had a train and trial contract. He played his first game of New South Wales Cup for the Warriors on the wing. He's a Te Aroha Junior, same club, same area as Jacob Laban in Wellington, but he also had time with Whiti Tira, which is kind of the Manawatu Horowhenua region, I think. Sio Kelly, he's 19 years old, starting centre in New South Wales Cup. Regular dudes, Tana Boyd, Sam Healy, youngsters, Tanner Smith, Jacob Laban, Iriaramia Toiava, Kailani Going's always good. He's a consistent presence. Freddie Lussick, but then you go, these are all young Warriors. Luke Hansen starting in the halves. Harry Durbin, Picquiao Jr., Toby Crosby from Greytown, Kalis Fatialofa from Otara, Caleb Lehman, Maris Jr., then Gary Tuilekatu and Whakato-Mawhai. Again, that Warriors team is full of young players, and they're on the rise. A couple of Kiwis notes, because we did have the Keanu Kinney injury. So he's got a major injury, but he's apparently might return this season. If he's got that spinal injury, but I just prefer to say spinal. How you feeling? Spinal. If he's got that situation, you don't really want him to like rush back into rugby league. So if there's no Keanu Kinney, Shans Nickel-Klokstad is a pretty good fullback, especially for international rugby league, I reckon. Then you've also got like Bailey Bentley Harpe. He's primarily a fullback. So he could, as pure fullbacks, he's someone in the mix. You've got all sorts of outside backs who could play fullback for the Kiwis. But what's if old Kalen Ponga, former age group golf championship in New Zealand? What's if he wants to play for the Kiwis? Well, then he might be the fullback. And like this is something I was thinking about the All Whites with Darren Baisley, right? Because everyone says Darren Baisley is a shit coach. But players want to play for New Zealand. First and foremost, like eligibility-wise, they want to play for New Zealand. And also, they rush around the world to play for New Zealand. Like Chris Wood is one of the best strikers in the Premier League. He risked it all to fly around the world just to play for New Zealand in New Zealand. He didn't do all of that because Darren Baisley has a shit environment as a shit coach. Everyone says Stacey Jones is a shit coach. But every player who's part of the Kiwis, the thing that stands out in my mind is Scott Sorensen on the Bloke in a Bar podcast. He's talking about how amazing the Kiwis environment under Stacey Jones was. So if all those players love the Kiwis environment, that's a pretty good, reinforcement for Stacey Jones as a coach. If Kalen Ponga chooses to play for the Kiwis, it's a pretty good vote of confidence for Stacey Jones as the coach. You do lose some eligibility battles, for sure. But you also have Casey McLean, 18 years old at the time, born and raised in Sydney, playing for the best team, the Panthers at the time. He chooses to play for the Kiwis. He doesn't make that decision because Stacey Jones is a shit coach with a shit environment. So at some point, we just need to kind of, obviously results matter, but we need to absorb the information given to us from the people there and learn. And if Stacey Jones,
especially for international sports,
exactly.
where like the vibe of the culture is actually so much, it's kind of the most important thing you can do, because you don't have time to come up with complicated tactical setups. You have to run on vibes. But the good coaches at international level, and sometimes it doesn't translate between international and club level. Like you might be good at one and not good at the other, but there's definitely a trend there between like the good international teams absolutely have that kind of that environment where players just want to be there.
If Stacey Jones gets Casey McLean and Kalen Ponga to play for the Kiwis, that's pretty good. That's some of the best eligibility work. They have a lot of staff, like Stephen Kearney's hard out into it in Australia as well. Like, I mean, he's doing his job. But it kind of, like, Kalen Ponga hasn't actually made a decision. Who knows if it's possible, right? Like, we don't actually have any kind of clarity, but it's an option. And if it happens, that's a pretty big positive note for Stacey Jones. But that's especially interesting with Keanu Kinney out injured. The other dude who I think could enter the Kiwis mix is Xavier Willison. Talked about him before. He's got a few eligibility options. I think he's Tongan heritage. He's also Cook Islands international. But he's also like born and raised in Aotearoa from the Waikato Taharoa connections, Willison Whānau connection. And then you're like, okay, so let's go through the forwards. James Fisher-Harris, Joseph Tapane, maybe Moses Leota, Sofa Solomona, Griffin Neem, Leo Thompson, Nafahu White, Xavier Willison. Oh, crikey Jack. I still think Halasima will play for Tonga. As far as the young Warriors go, Leotawa could be an option for Samoa, but he could also be an option for the Kiwis. He played for New Zealand A, but I don't think that means a whole lot. And again, if you've got a starting opportunity for Samoa or Tonga compared to a squad depth option for New Zealand Kiwis, you're probably going to take the starting option, right? Like Isaiah Katoa can be the starting half for Tonga for the next 10 years. Like that's just a better option than being behind Jerome Hughes and Dylan Brown. As an example, because Isaiah Katoa is from Wellington, but he can also play for New South Wales. Let me stop there before we go too deep into eligibility, Tier 1, Tier 2, New South Wales, Queensland, and all that shit. But, like, I do think, like, Vaimonga, he's got a few nations he can represent. Leotawa, Samoa, Kiwis. Halasima, to me, has the most clarity as a future Tongan international. Let's go football now. So Auckland FC, good win. 2-0 win against Brisbane Roar on a pitch which looked like you're someone's backyard in Aotearoa. It was the old Suncorp Stadium. I know Aussies and their pitches, they don't have the best pitches over there. Like it's quite interesting. But that was weird. Wellington Phoenix men 2-2 draw, and Wellington Phoenix women, I think they had a loss. Yeah, so
Melbourne, to the undefeated Melbourne City, in fairness.
Wellington Phoenix women not going to make the finals.
Doesn't look like it. Actually, not officially out of it. Still, I think there's a mathematical chance which is not going to happen because they don't score goals. And They keep conceding first, and their first halves are terrible. And well, their first halves aren't terrible in performance. The first halves just always terrible, and they keep being behind at halftime, and they keep losing by 1-goal margins as well. They had 9 defeats last year by 1 goal, and this year they're now up to, after this Melbourne City one, they've lost 9 games this year by 1-goal margins, where it's like one extra defensive play or one good goal up the other end cancels that out. It's fairly demoralizing how much they've just repeated the pattern of last season.
Keep your head up, Bombadil.
Yeah, it's, well, you know,
Phoenix men.
We'll build on.
I was interested to see old Lucas Kelly-Heald in the midfield.
Yeah.
I found that quite interesting. He started his career as a left back. I think his best position might be centre back because he's tall. He's got a good left boot. Left back, he kind of, I don't know if he's fast enough to get up and down the field as much as you want, especially compared to a Sam Sutton. But I didn't mind him kind of just patrolling the midfield in that Alex Rufer type of role, especially his size, his stature. Use that as an entry point into the Wellington Phoenix 2-2 draw. Like, what'd you make of Kelly-Heald just stepping into the midfield? Kelly-Heald in the midfield.
Well, I mean, you talked about Warriors versatility. I think Giancarlo Italiano takes that to a whole other level with his Phoenix teams. Everyone plays everywhere. It's all over the show. Probably too much. Like, if you look at the results and the lack of consistency they've had, apart from consistently not scoring goals, just like their female counterparts, perhaps there's a point where too much versatility becomes an issue when you just have players who aren't able to like lock down a role and stick with it and focus on it week after week and get better at it. And even if it's a couple of roles that they're working on. But I mean, who scored the first goal? Corbin Piper scored the first goal, didn't he? So like, he's a good example of someone who just kind of plays everywhere. But he's the type of player where actually I don't think that's a problem for him. In fact, I think, like, in general, they played quite well in that game. They probably should have won. They just couldn't hold on at the end. But like, I don't know. There's a lot to like to that. I felt like they were building off of the draw they got against Sydney before the international break, and they're a little bit more. It's never been a lack of application, but I think there may be just a little bit more cohesion, something like that. I think the Chiefies changed the system a bunch of times, and maybe this latest one is a little bit more suiting what they're doing, because they had a bunch of defensive injuries in this game. Isaac Hughes will probably be back next week, but he missed out, and Scott Wooden also injured. Don't know when he'll be back or what the situation of that is. Scott Wooden had played 53, I think it was, consecutive games in a row, 90 minutes every single time for the Wellington Phoenix. Like, he did not miss a minute last season. He had not missed a minute this season, and he's out injured. And he's the only sort of, well, him and Tim Payne are the only experienced players in that back line. Sam Sutton's starting to get towards that classification as well. But yeah, so I thought that was a very strong performance where they really did have to mix and match in a way where sometimes it's been versatility to just trying to, like, players are playing different positions because they're just looking for solutions. They're looking for something different. They're trying to find something that works. Here it was like patching things up. It was Alex Rufer's not there. Rich Ray's injured. Who are we going to play as defensive midfield? Well, someone else is just going to have to do a job. It's not like looking for the thing they're going to stick with for the rest of the season. It's just, how can we get through this game? Who's going to play where? Matt Sheridan playing as the left centre back, Tim Payne sliding in the middle, Corbin Piper at right back. And I thought for the most part these guys all played really well. Like, it wasn't the sad, confused Phoenix that was sent in the sort of month after the big derby loss. They're building back a little bit of confidence, and Chico Geraldes does help that a lot because, like you said earlier, razzle dazzle machine. I'm always like, you know, I want to have a little bit of fun when I'm watching these teams, regardless of these. I like a dude who's going to throw in some back heels, even if you don't need to. Like, just do it anyway. It's fun. It's cool. Especially if you're an import, you got a little bit more license like that. But he also scored a really nice goal. So and he got the assist for Costa Barbarouses in the previous game as well. So there's 2 games in a row where he's got a goal contribution. So he seems to be settling nicely on and off the field. Like, there was some nice stuff there. Look, Luke Brooks-Smith getting a start and running around a bit and doing what he does. Like I like seeing that. That's what I was saying about Ella Jerez and the women's team. I kind of just want to see guys and girls like that when they're not really playing for finals, getting a bit more time to adjust to the level and building towards the future, which is also, again, reiterated. Pretty sure this is why Marco Rojas has been released now. It's because they've got nothing else to play for. He's constantly injured. They must have decided not to re-sign him for next season. You might as well just give those minutes to someone else. And this is just a way of getting clarity. But I will say on Marco Rojas, because Chico Geraldes said something after his Instagram story about how much he was enjoying watching Lord of the Rings. He also mentioned something about the Rojas departure, saying like what a great teammate he is and best luck for the future and blah blah blah. I'm like, you knew this dude for 5 weeks, like you barely overlapped. And then I noticed this morning as well, Olivia Ferguson had tweeted something else about import striker for the Phoenix women. Had tweeted one of the kindest and most genuine people I've ever met. You will be missed, Marco. Like she's not even a teammate of his. So I think those are nice things to reiterate. Well, a lot of people seem to be moaning about why the Phoenix have released him, even though it seems to make perfect sense. It's like it seems to be more clarity this way than the other way. I'll just reiterate that about Marco Rojas. It's like two teammates, well, one teammate and one player, one club mate, saying extremely nice things about him, who when they weren't even in his closest orbit for the short time he was back with the Phoenix this season. So the measure of the man right there. Like he is known to be a champion bloke, and there's a further evidence towards it. Did you catch the Auckland FC game overlapped with the Warriors though? So that was a little bit tricky. I was double screening it, but I'm assuming you didn't see a lot of that game.
Yeah, but it is 2025. You can watch it various times. But I do want to.
That's true. That's true.
I do have a Wellington Phoenix point because I like your versatility thing, like bringing the Warriors. Fisher, Harris, Barnett, Jackson Ford, Vaimonga, Halasima. Like they're all edge forwards who can play middle, who have now played middle for a while. Like Fisher Harris started at the Panthers an edge forward. Barnett, early at the Raiders, early at the Knights, he was an edge forward. Aaron Clark was a hooker, then a half, then a hooker before now being a middle forward. When I look at that Phoenix kind of attacking group, to me, they're all the same player. Ishige, Costa. Oh, no, I'm having a blank. Throw some other attacking players in there.
Well, Geraldes feels like a direct replacement for Rojas. Like I was at first excited to see them play together, and now I'm realizing that actually Geraldes is replacing him. And hopefully they resign. I would like to see that happen. But Nathan Walker, Luke Brooks-Smith, there's Luke Supik, like
to me, yeah,
a lot of speed there, a lot of runners.
Yeah, they're all kind of the same, similar player, which for the Phoenix is important because they just it's all about getting into a space, and it doesn't really matter who you are. You just get into that space, and then you put the ball into space, and then someone else is there. And you're also a big fan of the formation chat, which I'm less so.
But less so with the Phoenix at the moment because I can't keep up with it.
That's what I'm saying.
But that's one thing about Auckland is they've played two different ways: is the 4-2-3-1 or the 4-4-2, which is not really very different at all. It's just whether the striker plays alongside the other striker or drops it. But very consistent how they set up.
Phoenix
less so.
You just have bodies, and then you got Chico popping up everywhere. So it's like Chico goes everywhere, especially in the game on the weekend, and then because they're all kind of similar stature as another similarity they have. And they just kind of pop up around Chico, Geraldes. And it's like when I was watching that, I was like, I don't know how Nick can get any formation insight. To me, the formations are overrated. You just kind of assess it a different way, which I haven't actually come up with, so I'm kind of talking on my backside. But I'm like, what? Is this the Chico formation where you just have guys around the field and Chico moving around everywhere else? Or is there a special name? But I did chuckle because obviously in defense, then you got Chico and Costa up top and it's like a 4-4-2 defensive formation. But with the ball, there is no formation. It's just Chico floats around the ball and then there's other dudes working, because my apology, but like Chico's not necessarily the big worker, nor should he be, because he's the razzle dazzle. I said merchant, you said machine, similar M words.
Same thing. Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah, and I noticed, I can't remember when it was, but there was one instance where he tracked back, he ran out to the wing, he did a slide tackle, and it looked exactly like the kind of slide tackle that a guy who doesn't make a lot of slide tackles makes, if that makes sense. You know, there's the kind of tackle that you make when you're the guy who doesn't normally track back, but you're making a little bit of an effort in this instance. Like, it was a bit clumsy. Sort of, you know, you might want to be careful with dangling the legs sometimes in those ones, and you don't want to be caught by a VAR, screenshot which notices some sprig to shin action going on. That wasn't an instance in this one, but yeah, it looked like, which I can relate to, because I've always played a bit like that myself as well. You run around, but I don't like to jump into tackles. Those can hurt sometimes. So yeah, but that's his role. He's the razzle dazzle merchant machine. So do what you got to do.
I'm sure Chico Geraldes, he can learn how to tackle from Tim Payne, Alex Rufer, Corbin Piper's he's a physical football player,
a rugged individual. Yes,
like they kept talking about I think Brooks Smith, and like his physicality and like how that looks. Like, yeah, sure, he's a youngster, physicality against men on the training paddock and the games, that's important, but there is no, with respect to T-Pain, with respect to Rufer, nothing compares to when Corbin Piper is bursting forward. There's not a whole lot of razzle-dazzle in him bursting forward. He is an absolute steamroller who just steamrolls his way up the guts with a football at his feet. And maybe the ball's going to stay at his feet. Maybe it's going to bounce all over the show. I'd say half the time it ends up successful, and that's a good ratio for a style of player like that. But yes, I got to come on here and talk some football. So of course I got to watch a bit of Auckland FC. They are the best team in the A-League. So I do actually enjoy watching them. Now I can't say I watched all 90 minutes front to back, or 120 minutes as it is these days. But the Yucky pitch, away win, but Howieson.
Quite a bit of him, yeah. 45 minutes of Cam Howieson, and they played him as the Guillermo Maia role. They subbed Max Mata off, which is probably a matter of Mata coming back from injury, so 45 minutes max, maybe. But they brought on Howieson. They could have brought on Randall. They brought on Howieson and had him as like my ghost main striker and Howieson and behind him. I thought that was interesting.
Well, actually, I was flicking with the Warriors, but the deep dive I did, like the sit down and actually watch some of the game, was in the second half. So I didn't have Mata in the game. So I was going to ask you if Mata, what was happening there, because Howieson, he played alongside right? So that was a nice little combination of the wee lads. But I lost my train of thought.
Well, Max Mata played the first half and they were 1-0 up at halftime. So it was standard Max Mata stuff where there's not that many instances where I could think back of like crucial things he did. But once again, as has been the case all season, they're a better team when he's on the pitch, and they tend to win games when they tend to score more goals than their opponents do while he's on the pitch. But also statistically, the suggestion seems to be they also concede fewer goals while he's on the pitch. Although not to the extent of what we saw in this game, which was a big milestone match in the season for Auckland FC, because for the first time since week 6, or game 6, I suppose, it was a return of the Nando Peineke-Dan Hall centre-back partnership, which has now played 7 games together. 6 games, they were undefeated in those 6 games. They now added a 7th to that, which they won. So I think that means they must have this. I'm going to say this, but it sounds like it sounds like too good to be true. But no, it is correct. Looking at my records here, they have won all 7 games where Nando Peineke and Dan Hall have been the centre backs. In those 7 games, they've kept 6 clean sheets. They've conceded once and 600 and, well, I don't know how to frame that exactly because, well, no, because neither of them have been subbed in those minutes. The reason I get confused is because obviously in a lot of those games, it's not just Hall and Peineke at centre back, because the last 10, 15 minutes, as we also saw in this game, Tommy Smith, the closer, back into his old role. So you often get that sort of the third centre back comes in. Sometimes it wasn't with them, but in other situations while Hall was injured, Sakai might do that role as well when Tommy Smith was already starting. So I do like to chuck in a third centre back to close things out, as they did here. But in those games where Nando Peineke and Dan Hall have started and they've played all 630 minutes of those games, well, like, neither of them have been subbed off in those ones. They've conceded once and 7 goals with those 2 as the starting centre backs.
Well, you got to include Franny de Vries and Sakai. Like, they're there as well.
They are there as well, but Sakai didn't play one of those games, which is why I don't say the fullback 4, because I'd have to cut out the one where is it at least one? Yeah, there was a win over Newcastle Jets where Sakai was injured. They did play these ones, so yeah, there's still 6 of those 7 games have had the fullback 4 there starting. So that's as good as it gets. And Alex Paulson, I think, also has looked pretty good in their last couple games. He's been good throughout the season, but he's just had a little bit more to do recently. Plus, he saved a penalty a couple weeks ago, so that's probably a little bit of a resurgence. There was one of the fellas from he's like one of the head honcho fellas within the wider, as the like Black Knights Football Association, whatever the hell they call themselves, like the parent, the umbrella company thing, did do a podcast with, I think, The Athletic, where they were just doing a series on multi-club ownership, and so they talked to this bloke, and he did specifically mention the not the intent, but just how it would be a good idea maybe if Alex Paulson next season would go on loan to one of their other clubs, so probably Hibernian in Scotland. So that is something that's now on record as at least a suggestion, if not a direct plan. So don't think we'll see Alex Paulson in the A-League next season after being the best goalkeeper in the A-League for 2 consecutive seasons. I don't think we should see him in the A-League next season either. Like, this is how that is supposed to work, is he makes that next step, which sounds like we'll probably be with Hibs in Scotland. I'd just like to see him go straight in at Bournemouth and be the number 1 there. And then you have Alex Paulson trying to keep out Nottingham Forest team with Chris Wood, Tyler Binden, and Marko Stamenic, all of them at once. Why not? We'll get Matt Dibley-Dares and start some games for Fulham maybe. Just might as well just lean the whole way into it, In fact, Nando Peineke, why don't you just go to Bournemouth as well? And if he goes, Max Mata will have to go with him because they go everywhere together.
Fellowship there, going on a journey, a footballing journey. But there was a notable change in the lineup with Marley Francois getting a crack on the left wing, which to me is part of that rotation, right? Like, we've had Gillian, we've had Randall, we've got Marley Francois. Marley Francois, since he joined, he's had a lot more game time, definitely, than Gillian. But I also think he's getting a few more opportunities than Randall. But I believe that's just part of the rotation and getting those dudes game time in the A-League. What have you made of Marley Francois? Because he was like a mid-season signing he must be doing something right, and he's obviously he slots into the team nicely. I don't see anything wrong with his style of play or what he's up to for Auckland FC. But especially because, like, the other dudes are Kiwis, Randall, Gillian, they're Kiwis. We've got Max Mata up top. He's a Kiwi. We got Logan Rogerson on the other side of the field. He's a Kiwi. We got Howieson in the midfield. He's a Kiwi. There's all these Kiwis that we like to talk about a lot. But most recently, we've had a little bit more Marley Francois. What have you made about him and what he brings Auckland FC?
Well, I would rather see Gillian or Randall for the obvious reason that you just mentioned, but I think while he's a handy winger, he's maybe a little bit more of a one-on-one threat for those guys. Like Gillian knows how to weave in around defenders, and Randall knows how to run past them. But Francois is a little bit more like you can just give him one-on-one, and he might be able to drop his shoulder and dribble past a guy. He is pretty quick. He doesn't seem to be a very good shooter to me. He's had a few opportunities where it just seems like you're snatching at it or whatever. But obviously Liam Gillian had the same issue where he struggled to finish chances while he was playing a lot. I do wish Gillian hadn't gone so completely out of the mix, because I think there's a happy medium there where maybe he was playing too much at the start of the season, but then now he's not playing enough. But it's tricky with their A-League benches because they don't actually give you that much room with them. But yeah, Francois he's energetic, he's good on the counter-attack. So I think he suits what they're trying to do. And in a way where like, because I thought about this a little bit as well, what you're saying before about the Phoenix having a lot of attackers who are quite similar to each other. And so you don't necessarily, like, that's good when it comes to trying to mix and match players around and picking a team. It's not so good when plan A doesn't work and you need to rely on something a little bit different. Another reason why I quite like Luke Brooks-Smith in there getting these starts so early is because I think he actually is a little bit different. He's more physical than than a lot of these other sort of attackers who either like to run in behind like Walker and Supik, or like to play in pockets like Ashige and Costa Barbarouses. So I think they probably need a bit more variety in like the profiles of attackers that they have. I think Auckland FC have clearly got very, very good variety with the different types of attackers. The obvious one is the Max Mata, Guillermo Mai combination, how they complement each other by being very different players. But even like what I was saying there about the little differences between Francois and Gillian and Randall. Then on the other side, you've got Logan Rogerson, who's a very like up and down straight runner. He's fast, but he's not a ducker or a weaver or a step over guy. He's just like, kick the ball in front of me and I will run in a straight line and I will get there. And also, I thought he did really well to set up Sakai's goal on the weekend, and the way in which he's added two little aspects to his game this season with Rogerson. One is the long shooting, which also he's shown off for the All Whites. And also there's like these cutbacks that he's getting in. He was doing a bit of that already in Finland. He was getting a lot of assists in Finland. So that's maybe more of a continuation, but like, he gets to the line, he cuts the ball back to the penalty spot, or he squares it across goal. Like, he just puts the ball in good areas, usually along the ground in a way where, like, Francis de Vries on the other side, he's trying to hit your head. Like, he's trying to lob it over the top. Max Massa headers or whatever, or Nando Pinecker off the end of a corner kick. Logan Rogerson is also a big crosser, but he's a crosser in a different way. So there's like another example there of how they can, how they're different players, give them different things when they're on attack. And then, of course, there's Nando Moreno as well, who was injured for this game, hence the Francois start. Like, he's a tricky South American winger. He's physical, he's fast, he likes to play in tight spaces, he'll shoot from distance, like he'll combine with little 1-2s and stuff. He's a very there's plenty that he brings to the table as well. He's probably their most accomplished most accomplished winger. I'll keep the strikers out of that conversation. But yeah, like there's a variety to the Auckland FC attack, which, since we were talking about the Phoenix maybe not having that, it's worth highlighting how well Auckland FC have done to bring that through at the first attempt. Like, they built this team from scratch, and they still managed to find players who complement each other so well. It's not like you had an existing team. You're like, yeah, but what we need is a winger who does this, this, and this. It's like they managed to find those guys without having the platform already there, showing them what they were lacking. They just like they built a jigsaw puzzle with their eyes closed. It's incredible stuff how they've managed to put that team together, and that is, again, like a very, very good reason to be excited for how perhaps, since the Wellington Phoenix women are about to miss the playoffs again, how perhaps Auckland FC's women's team might come together following similar ideas of squad building there. Although they were supposed to, I'm sure they said they were going to announce a head coach last month, and it didn't happen. So don't know what the holdup is there, but that is something else that's coming along down the line too. And if we've seen Auckland FC come straight in and be so effective in the men's competition, don't see why we shouldn't see Auckland FC come in and be so effective in the women's competition, which, like all these competitions, ebbs and flows. But I think the A-League women right now is more vulnerable, like more there for the taking for a expansion team to just come in and be very good from the outset. So I have high hopes for how that's going to go as well. And plus, we've started to see the Auckland FC reserves kicking off their Northern League campaign as well. They drew with Fencibles in their first game, and then they lost to a late goal against Tauranga City in the second game. So, but they've been good and competitive in both. They haven't won either of their first games, but they've been good competitive. They've scored goals in each of them. They've looked pretty handy without leaning into guys like Lewis Toomey or Liam Gillian or any of the older Callan Elliott, some of the older players. They've stuck to their under-20s for the first couple of games. They haven't sort of given free minutes to fringe A-League guys who might need them as of yet, but I'm sure there will be some games where that's the case too.
I always forget about Toomey. Like Toomey,
he got minutes on the weekend, eh?
Yeah, Gillian, Randall, Toomey, they're all there in the mix as Auckland FC attacking players. Just quickly to finish, give me one player or one pocket of your Flying Kiwis realms that is hot right now after the weekend's football. Is there a player around the world who you're thinking about a lot? Is there a little cluster of players that you're thinking about a lot? Where are you going to take us?
There's many different equally deserving directions I could go in there. Did you see the Moses Dyer goal on the weekend?
Yeah, bloody oath I saw Moses Dyer, because a few podcasts ago I was like, oh, what's this guy capable of? And you're like, oh, I don't know. He's just kind of plodding around the Flying Kiwis.
Capable of that, apparently.
Wait, so yeah, give us some Moses Dyer words to finish here.
Well, I wasn't going to... I was leaning towards going with the Finn Sermon note, because I'm sure you love Finn Sermon. I love Finn Sermon. People who watched him play for the Wellington Phoenix or for New Zealand love Finn Sermon. I don't think any of us love Finn Sermon as much as Philip Neville loves Finn Sermon. Every time he's asked to talk about Finn Sermon and Portland Timbers, post-game interviews, pre-game interviews, whatever, whenever he's facing the media, and they ask him about the 21-year-old Kiwi centre-back who none of them knew about, and there was a thing the commentator in their last game was talking about Sermon at one point, being like, he's a complete unknown last year. He only played one game. Like, he's a capped international. He was one of the best defenders in the A-League. Just because you don't pay attention outside of America, like most Americans, doesn't mean that he was an unknown player. But fair point. Like, this is how the Americans are going to learn about how good Finn Sermon is, by him doing that. But he didn't score a goal like Moses Dyer scored a goal. So we will give Moses Dyer the last word. He actually scored twice in that game. He scored the first goal as well. A nice header from a cross out wide, and then they won 2-0 with this is Galway United he plays for in the League of Ireland. They won 2-0 with, I think, 28% of possession. They just scored 2 goals. Both goals stemmed from a goalkeeper kicking the ball long up the field. And that's all it took, just a couple of clinical Moses Dyer finishes for Galway to get a good victory. They're actually only goal difference out of first place after, I think, 6 games, which is very different to Oscar Van Hattem's Sligo Rovers, who were last, and he cost them a goal on the weekend when he played a blind back pass that got intercepted. So not ideal there, but yeah, shout out to Moses Dyer. I don't think, Max Mata did get selected a few times, but he was in and out of the all-white squads while playing in League of Ireland. Nando Peineke kept getting selected consistently, but he was already in all-white consistently before he moved to League of Ireland. So I don't know that there's much Moses Dyer could do at this, and there's just more depth now as well. I don't know there's much Moses Dyer could do to get into all-whites capacity, so it's not really worth talking about whether his good form might lead him into World Cup selection down the line or anything like that. But that's fine. We got lots of 50 plus professional men, let alone how many women there are as well, playing around the world at the moment. You can't fit them all into a squad. It's enough just to look at Moses Dyer scoring a banger of a goal, incredible volley, created himself too, running onto the bouncing ball, like nods it past the defender, takes it down on his chest, smacks it on the bounce, tight angle, whips it over the top of the keeper. It's enough just to look at a goal like that and be like, that's amazing. You don't have to think, oh, the Phoenix should sign him, the Auckland FC should sign him. You don't have to think like, how's he going to get into the All Whites? You can just look at a great goal and be like, that's a great goal. And it was a great goal. He mentioned in his, he did an interview afterwards where he said he had a similar chance in the first half and he tried to pass instead of shoot. And then he got into the sheds at halftime and he said I don't know who that means. Probably, I guess the coach, teammates, mate, just shoot next time. Get in that position again, just shoot. So he did. As he said, he was fortunate to get a similar chance again later on, and he took it. That was a great goal.
Bombadil. That is our podcast for this week. Big up yourself. Hope you're doing all right. Take care of yourself. Do the best you can. Have a crack. And we'll be recording our bonus podcast on Thursday for the folks on Patreon and anyone with a paid Substack subscription. Got a lot more Kiwi sporting information coming your way. So big up yourself. Love yourself. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Cheer, cheer. Bombadil.